Tier lists. Everyone loves a good tier list. Could be League of Legends, CSGO, goddamn Mario Party. Are you fucking serious? Now I love tier lists. Seems like the general consensus among the human race is that we enjoy these things. They provide nothing but thoughtful discussions among communities. They give people a chance to voice their opinions on topics, no matter how out of left field it may be. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest, they're just hella entertaining. I mean, I couldn't give less of a shit about Windwood instruments normally, but you put these things in a tier list format and I am all in, dude. But to me, no genre coincides with tier lists more than fighting games. Fighting games and tier lists have always been inseparable. Doesn't matter if you're playing Street Fighter V or Fighting Street. Tier lists are baked into fighting games DNA. Now with every tier list, you got a few main talking points. One of those being the top tiers. And we could talk about those, and boy, let me tell you, that just sounds riveting. Nah, man, what I'm much more interested in is the polar opposite. The bottom tier. Bottom of the barrel, complete shit, oh god, please help me characters. There has always been something so captivating about bottom tiers. Most fighting games I play, I seem to end up gravitating towards them. Normally never on purpose. Maybe it's just because their kit, terrible or not, is interesting. Maybe their design is cool. Hell, maybe I'm just a masochist in disguise. I don't know. But what I do know is that bottom tiers are fascinating. But before we talk about them, let's discuss the difference between a low tier and a bottom tier. You see, most fighting games in the modern age have these beautiful things called balance patches that a lot of the time can help out a struggling character in the meta get some much needed buffs to play with the big boys. Unlike back in the days before online play was a necessity, where if your favorite character just so happened to be the worst in the entire game, tough shit, Jimmy, it's your fault for picking a grappler. But nowadays, more often than not, there's less so straight up bottom tiers and more so just varying degrees of not so top tier. Unless you're Videl, there's no saving that. But some modern fighting game characters are just so unlucky, or their designs are so spectacularly flawed that they just still get stuck in the abyss of mediocrity. So let's talk about some shitty ass characters. Super Smash Bros. Has definitely had its fair share of woefully bad characters. Whether it be Kirby in Melee with his devastating damage numbers, Ganon in pretty much every game until he got a sword, and every single character in Brawl that wasn't named Meta Knight. But I don't think any of them have been as consistently awful as this guy right here. Little Mac is such a hilariously terrible design for a Smash character that honestly, till this day, I still can't believe they actually created him. Let's just run down the list here. He's a character and a platform fighter that can't hurt you with aerial moves. For being a character solely focused on ground combat, he has one of the worst grabs I've ever seen. His recovery is so hilariously bad that even when it got buffed in Ultimate, he still can't make it back after just a little love tap. In fact, it's so bad that some characters just invalidate it completely, for free. Now, speaking of flawed designs, Injustice 2. Yeah, no, Injustice 2 ain't exactly the best fighting game ever made. Sure, it's got a lot of cool looking characters, awesome graphics, a great story mode, but it's also got a lot of... and a whole lot of... And no other character suffered from this more than Swamp Thing. Now, Swamp Thing by himself honestly isn't that bad of a character. In fact, if you pick this guy up and plopped him into basically any other fighting game, he'd honestly be pretty good. But the fact that he's a grappler in the game where good keep away is basically a birthright, yeah, it's about exactly how you'd expect. But hey, let's say hypothetically you do manage to get in. Well, it still sucks to be you because your fastest buttons are likely to be even slower than the zoner who just spent the last few minutes keeping you at full screen. Because apparently Swamp Thing moves about as slow as the plants he sprouts from the ground. Speaking of, Swamp Thing's character power also sucks. If Injustice 2 didn't live and die by its zoning, then it lived and died by the character powers. And in a game where a lot of them were pretty damn busted, Swamp Things can be best described as, middling. You see, OST would work his nature magic and sprout a bunch of pointy boys from the ground, rendering any opponent that got caught up in him unable to jump or dash, while also taking some damage over time. I didn't say it was a crazy amount of damage, but hey, we'll take what we can get at this point. But what makes this bad is the fact that if Swamp Thing jumps, the plants stop growing. Like, why? You know what you normally want to do when a projectile is thrown your way? You want to jump over that sumbitch and bop your opponent on the noggin. But if you do that, then congrats, bucko, you just wasted your character power. You know, grapplers in general tend to be on the lower end of the tier list just by the nature of their design. Hugo in Street Fighter 4, Potemkin in Guilty Gear, Jiren in Dragon Ball FighterZ. Okay, let's talk about Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now, DBFZ is no stranger to bottom tiers. In fact, with every major patch, the bottom tiers have switched up so much that you're basically just playing roulette on who's gonna be ass this season. But let's start from the top, shall we? Season 1 of FighterZ seems like so long ago that oftentimes I forget it even happened. Back in the days of 16 hard knockdown dunks, Super Saiyan Vegeta assists anywhere and everywhere, Goku Black as a supposed top tier, Cell being on top of the world, and the looming threat of Bardock was still just that. Looming. It was the goddamn Wild West back then. But one thing that was pretty much universally agreed on was that Krillin was trash. And it was more or less all thanks to this. His assist was just laughably bad. And I don't mean like, oh, it's kind of awkward, but I can work around it, and no. I mean so painfully, mind-numbingly, abysmally bad that it almost single-handedly stopped people from playing him for almost 2 years. As the season went on, the first wave of DLC rolled out. Bardock was released from the depths of hell and reigned over the game for a millennia or two. Vegito and Zamasu dropped with the most stylish combos the game had seen, but none of these guys were anywhere close to bottom tier. At the time, nah. The first true bottom tier to be added to the game was this poor unfortunate soul right here. Now, I remember when the trailer for 17 dropped, a lot of people were actually really worried he was gonna be another monstrous top tier character because of his rekkas. Oh, how innocent we were. And that brick wall of reality hit us just about as hard as 2H hit 17 right out of his only usable tool. His rekkas had gaps so big that you could literally anti-air him for recharge. He had an option select to kind of counteract it, but the fact that you had to gamble every single time you wanted to use his only usable special move? Now, I stuck with 17 for months, hoping and praying that the gods of Arxis would bless me with buffs come season 2. Spoilers, that didn't happen, but what did happen was they released the double whammy of Videl and Jiren. Oh boy. Now, you could argue that every Season 2 DLC character was bottom tier because they weren't GT Goku, but these two are a different breed of awful. Let's start with Videl, because I'd say it's a little more cut and dry why she's so spectacularly bad. You see this? This is a Reflect. It's a very, very important tool for defense in this game. It's basically as close to a push block as you'll see in DBFZ. It punishes untrue block strings, it gets the opponent off of you on wake up, it gives you more advantage on a hard read. Reflect is one of the pillars of this game. So, what happens when you take away something so vital and useful from a character? You get Videl. Now, up until this point, Reflect was a universal mechanic. You know, a new character releases, a Reflect is coming along with them. It was something that didn't need messing with. Well, apparently Arxis thought otherwise because they messed with it big time, and we ended up getting this instead. Now, the dodge mechanic isn't all bad, all right? You know, you can bait Spark with it, you can, maybe dodge a level 3? Okay, yeah, no, there's no saving this. It doesn't get the opponent off you can't punish nearly as many things with it, even though that seems to be what it's supposed to be used for. Hell, half the time, it just straight up doesn't work, and you get punished for making the right call. Now, Videl had some other problems. You know, having no neutral besides your superhero BF and damage to match the show's power scaling definitely don't help. But to this day, Videl remains a fundamentally gimped character because she's the only one who can't reflect. But having a reflect certainly didn't save this fuck! Jiren is a character I was so excited for. Everything I saw of him in that tiny little 30-second trailer leading up to his release made me hyped. He looked like he was gonna have good buttons, both melee and projectile counters, and a command grab. I was set, man. This was gonna be my main, the character that I'd fall in love with and never look back. And I mean, half of that happened. So at face value, you look at Jiren and think, man, that seems like a pretty good selection of tools. How could a character like this possibly be bad? Oh, you sweet summer child. Jiren's always had a couple of good things about him. He has some good buttons, and his neutral is decent. But that is just about where it ended. Let's start with the most blatant and obvious thing, his command grab. So a lot of characters in DBFZ don't telegraph their command grab too obviously. And if they do, it'll oftentimes look like something else in their kit to throw you off and make you react poorly. But Jiren? Oh wow, I wonder what the fuck he's doing! 28 frames. 28 frames was the magic number. The most absolutely atrocious command grab in this entire game. And it wouldn't have been so bad if it weren't for the fact that Jiren had no fast low. So he was forced to rely on it to open people up. If you could react to the command grab, and I promise you could just sit there and block Jiren all day long. There wasn't a thing he could do about it. But that's only the tip of this shit iceberg, because he still had his counters. Now his counters were all fantastic, on paper. He had a melee counter with 3 different variations. One that could only catch mids and overheads, one that could only catch lows, and one that you spent a bar for and could catch everything. Now maybe that doesn't sound too bad, right? Like, just predict what attack they'll throw out. You're making a prediction already by using the counter anyway, right? True. However, if you see a dude running up on you about to mash, you throw out your counter more than ready to catch it and oops, they threw out a low. Sucks to suck, guess you'll die. Okay, well, next time that comes up, you choose to make that read and throw out your low counter instead, and oh damn, they just decided to mash instead. Guess that one's on me. Now sure, you could just throw out your EX counter and catch both. But this was before the great half-off sale of Season 3, so spending an entire bar of meter on a counter wasn't exactly the best thing to be doing constantly. But believe it or not, that wasn't even close to being his worst counter. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you Jiren's legendary counter Impact. Again, such a great move on paper. You toss it out when someone is bullying you with projectiles, big or small, you counter and toss some damage at them. Easy, simple, impossible to fuck up, right? Right. If you guessed right and correctly countered a projectile, you could instead be vanished, DP, level 3, punched, kicked, elbowed, sliced, spun on, dunked on, thick attack, perfect attack, crossed up, command grab. This was the only character I had ever seen that actively fucked you for guessing right. But you know what? Even with all of that, even with all the struggles and pain that come with playing a bottom tier, I still love them. Actually managing to land a dirty as hell mix with 17, getting your plant boys moving and bullying people with Swamp Thing, or bulldozing through a move with Little Max Hyper Armor and landing that sweet, sweet KO punch is just, ooh, good shit. And I mean hell, I've been maining Jiren since the day he came out, so obviously there's something very wrong with me. But even more so than that, I love bottom tiers because they create moments. Axe's legendary 4-stock against Silent Wolf's Fox. Komoda using Kirby to upset the Mario God ally.
Achilles looking there it is! Komoda beats Ally!
Infiltration busting out Hakan at EVO 2013 and oiling himself to one of the greatest comebacks in fighting game history. That shit is exciting. And that's what bottom tiers do best, man. They generate excitement.
Okay, the bomb. Give it to him right now. Give it there we go! Oh my god! Oh my goodness! Sauce does it!
I don't think anyone is jumping out of their gamer chairs to see the 374th Akuma versus Cammy match in a tournament. But the second someone whips out a Fong, you got people's attention. Seeing a bottom tier character hand a top tier their ass never fails to be hype as hell. And it doesn't just end there. You could be watching EVO, you see an ocean of GT Gokus just drowning more than half the roster out, and then suddenly you see a dude playing Android 17, and he starts kicking ass. Maybe even makes it to the top 8, and boom, you found a new favorite player. Shit like that is only possible because of bottom tiers. So what I'm really trying to say is, bottom tiers may be bad, but hot damn are they cool. Let's hear it for fighting games.
Oh my god!
Destruction!